So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on the topic of yoga psychology. And first of all, I'd like to send you greetings on behalf of the Ministry of Ayush office in Zagreb and ICCR and Indian Embassy in Zagreb. So we'll start slowly with our topic. I will open the presentation. So like this, you can see good.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay. So the yoga psychology is a very ancient science. Many thousand years back already we can find reference to that topic. But in the West, the connection of yoga with the psychology started maybe 100 years ago. And 1912, Carl Gustav Jung, so in the Transformation and Symbols of the Libido, he provided psychological interpretations of the passages in the Upanishads and the Rig Veda. And this opened the possibility to compare the practice of the psychoanalysis with yoga. So as we know, the Professor Carl Gustav Jung, he traveled to India also, and he was studying the yoga, trying to see what is the connection of yoga with the all knowledge about the psychology that he had, and try to understand the basic concepts of yoga. And also he was studying the Maharishi Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and I heard that he made even the commentaries on the Maharishi Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and still it is in some way in a preparation. I hope it will be published one day. It will be very valuable to see his view on the content of the Yoga Sutras. And then further, this was explored, that connection between yoga and psychoanalysis, 1923 by Oskar Schmidt in Psychoanalyse and Yoga. 1927, Wilhelm Hauer, he was giving lecture on yoga in the light of the psychotherapy. And like this, they continued, different psychologists from the West, they continued to study the yoga and try to find the connection link between the Western approach of psychotherapy with the yogic psychology. And then we have also one very valuable book written from Carl Gustav Jung, where he speaks about the connection of psychology with the experiences related to the awakening of the Kundalini, and how it is affecting the human psychic condition and what experiences are there and everything. So this is also a very interesting insight from the Carl Gustav Jung in that relation. But going back to the origin of the yoga psychology, so in some way I wanted to start from psychology and yoga, and then coming to the yoga psychology. Some very ancient text related to the yoga psychology is Yoga Sutras of Maharishi Patanjali, and also Bhagavad Gita, one very ancient text. So we will refer to these two texts to find the principles of the yoga psychology and the approach of yoga psychology. And this topic I chose because for today, because 2 days ago was the World Mental Health Day, Day of the World Mental Health, on the 10th of December. So it was all over the world celebrated somehow that knowledge which can and giving presentations and giving knowledge about the improvement of the mental health condition in the humanity and in the whole world. So I hope this lecture will give some little contribution to that topic. So related to the Maharishi Patanjali, teaching of Maharishi Patanjali, he is giving knowledge about yoga and how he is defining yoga, that this is the state of unified consciousness, the state in which consciousness is conscious of itself. And this is that state of pure consciousness, which he is giving the name Tada Drashtu Swarupe Avasthanam. It means the seer, the subject of consciousness, or consciousness itself, which is able to have a conscious experience when it is clean from all other objects of experience, but just experiencing itself in its pure original state. Swarupe, it means its own state, self-referral state of that consciousness, Swarupa. And then that state of consciousness, Patanjali is calling the state of yoga or the state of samadhi. Samadhi, the unified state of consciousness, where consciousness is conscious of itself and in relation to itself, by itself. The state of pure consciousness, or we can say transcendental consciousness, or turiya. So there are different names in the ancient literature for that state of consciousness. And also that state, from that point of view, we can see that the state of samadhi, which Patanjali speaks about as a goal of the practice of yoga, to achieve the state of samadhi, that this is experiential state, that the samadhi is experiential value. Samadhi do not exist outside of the ability for experience. We can say what exists is Sat Chit, or the absolute state of consciousness, the being. Being exists, it has its own existence. But the state of samadhi or pure consciousness, it has its own existence. But when that consciousness is conscious of itself, having knowledge of itself, this is called samadhi. So the samadhi is the experiential value of the state of pure consciousness or the state of a being. And that's why to reach the state of samadhi, we need to be able to have a direct experience of that state of consciousness, conscious experience of that state of consciousness. In that sense, yoga is giving some practices. How our conscious mind, our consciousness in its active state, can slowly start to reduce all its mental activity, which Patanjali is calling Chitta Vritti Nirodha, the field of individual consciousness, or the Chitta, and all the activities in that field of our individual consciousness called vrittis should become nirodha. Nirodha means to settle down and to stop. So the process of stopping all the mental activities in the consciousness while consciousness is awake and fully conscious is the process of yoga, which is then leading to that state when all the vrittis, all the activity stops and the consciousness remains awake and conscious, then it has conscious experience of itself. And this is the state of the samadhi or the state of yoga. So in that sense, yoga psychology is having the methodology, which is called yoga, to reach the state of yoga. And only such practices which are leading to the state of yoga can be called yoga. Only such kind of the practices. Whether this is related to any kind of the practice related to the meditative practices, like different kind of meditations, or the practices related to the breathing or to the physical movements of the body, asana, pranayama, or any other kind. So today you have many different systems of yoga with different names, and only that system of yoga through which you can be able to reduce all the mental activity and remain awake and reach the state of samadhi or the state of yoga is approving its name. So, so the purpose of yoga is actually that your own consciousness, or you, because we are the conscious beings, and we as a conscious being, we try to understand what is life around us, but also we try to understand who we are. Because from the birth, we start to somehow try to define ourselves when we become conscious. And we are able to have some knowledge and conscious experience of anything. We try to establish a relation of us with the things around us, with our parents, with the surrounding, with the toys, with everything, and trying to define in some way our existence, to have some knowledge about us, who we are. And this is what is growing with the age. And in some way, we see us in the mirror, and then we see how we look, and we say, I am that. And also the parents, they give us the name, and we can be recognized by our name because people are calling us by that name. So I am also that name. And then I realize some feelings which I have in relation to certain things in life. And then I define myself as a person with such and such character, responding to the circumstances and conditions in this or that way, and behaving in such a way and that way. Then people tell us we are good people, we are good person, or we are such person. And so we are slowly building up our knowledge about our identity. But all the knowledge about that identity is gathered and around the concept of the I, which becomes again not properly understood or known. So I feel, I know, I have such a name, I am such a person, and everything I in relation with all those different kinds of activities, which is in the yogic analysis, not our real I. Our real I is behind that I, which serves to the real I as an instrument for gaining experiences. And that I, which we are living from the childhood and continuing and trying to know something about us through that I, is never fulfilling its task. Because that I is not our real I, and it is called ego or asmita in the teaching of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And we will come to that. So in that sense, what is yoga aiming in the yoga psychology is to come to the root of the problem, of the ignorance about us, to the root, not trying to search our identity on the basis of our involvement in the life, in the world, like searching where we made mistake and what was mistake, which kind, and then what was the consequence of that, and all the psychological, as modern psychology is making analysis of our different psychical content, subconscious, and how it influenced on the conscious level and everything. And but still that I remains untouched in that sense. So the difference of yoga psychology is that it is starting from the very cause of the ignorance and trying to solve the problem on that level. When this is solved, then all kind of different problems starts to be solved. So this is the approach of the yoga psychology. It is locating the one problem which is at the source of all the problems in the life. And that one problem is the ignorance about our true self. Because we are, as I said, we are all the time out of ourselves. We are all the time identified with everything what we are doing, seeing, thinking, feeling, acting, or anything. But who is that I remains in ignorance. So the purpose of yoga is to come back to your own self. So this is and these are the 4 main sutras from the teaching of Maharishi Patanjali, which contains the essence of the yoga psychology. So the first sutra speaks about the teaching of yoga and what is the yoga. And that state of yoga is that state of our consciousness, which is neither involved in any kind of experience which are related to the past or future, but being fully awake in the present moment. And this is the Atha. The Atha means now. And the Anushasana means the teaching. The teaching of yoga is how to be now, how to be established in the present moment. And the present moment is always, real presence is in the gap between the different things we are experiencing. Because what we experienced is the past, what will be the next is the future, but what is in between is the presence, the pure presence. And this is that state of the gap. And that state of the 4th state of consciousness, or samadhi. This is that state where all the past ends and from where all the future begins. And so this is that value of the consciousness when it is fully awake, but not being involved in any kind of activities. And that intelligence of that gap is actually structuring all the activity. With that intelligence which is in that gap, but it is unmanifest. That's why it is called transcendental state of the consciousness. And this is eternal now. That state is eternal now. So to be present in now and living eternal now, it's only possible if we are able to have conscious experience 24 hours of that level of consciousness, which is the basis of all activities of the consciousness, and which is our true self, which is the state of Tada Drashtuk Svarupa Avasthanam. This is that state defined in the third sutra, which Patanjali is speaking at the beginning and saying about what he will be teaching. And how to reach that state of consciousness is how to come back to your own self, to that state of consciousness is the second sutra, Yoga Shita Vritti Nirodha. And then the fourth sutra explains the condition when we are out of ourselves, when we are identified with all different vrittis and different activities, which is leading us into the different mental conditions which we are experiencing in our life, different kind of the vrittis, which can be, some vrittis can be sukha, some can be dukkha, painful, some experiences can be pleasant and some painful. So the fourth sutra, that sutra of Patanjali, is the cause of ignorance or avidya. And in Ayurveda, avidya is called pragya paradha, or mistake of the intellect. And in Vedanta, it is called that which is not, or maya. So these are the three main concepts mentioned in the yoga, in Ayurveda, and in the Vedanta, which speak about mistake, which happens on that causal level of our consciousness when it starts to be to operate, to be active, to be connected with the experiences. And we will see what Patanjali speaks about that. So then the second chapter of Patanjali Yoga Sutras is very important for yoga psychology, because he is defining here the practice to remove the obstacles, or the first obstacle is that ignorance about our true self. And and then these sutras on the first chapter, or the second chapter, the first four sutras, speaking about the practice and the nature of those obstacles. And it says, tapah svadhyaya ishvara pranidhanani kriya yoga. So he says that to remove those obstacles which are preventing us to have full knowledge about us, that we know who we are, those obstacles, the first obstacle is called ignorance or avidya, that it can be removed through these practices. Tapas, it means tapas, svadhyaya, ishvara, pranidhana, those three kinds of the practices, which together he is calling them kriya yoga. So then samadhi, bhavana, artha, klesha, tanukarana, arthascha. So the purpose of those practices is to establish the state of samadhi, which can reduce those obstacles in our life. And those kleshas, it's called kleshas, those obstacles. And they are related to the Klishna vrittis, what Patanjali speaks in the first chapter, in the fifth sutra of the first chapter, where he speaks that this kind of vrittis can be divided in the 5 categories, and they can be also klishta or aklishta. So those vrittis can bring experience of pleasant experience or unpleasant, painful. So the klishta is that kind of activities, mental states, which are leading us to suffering and to the unpleasant experience. And the kleshas belong to the klishta vrittis, the kleshas. It means which is narrowing our consciousness, bringing into very tight identification with the content that it is experienced. And then Patanjali says that through the practice of yoga, especially those three aspects of the practice of yoga, the tapah, we will see what is the tapah, and swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means studying the self. Swa means the self, your true own self, your state of pure consciousness or samadhi state. And adhyaya means studying that by experiencing that. It means the regular, everyday practice of meditation for experiencing the state of transcendental consciousness or pure consciousness or samadhi. This is the swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is not just reading some spiritual texts in that sense, how it was taught, but it is related to the practice of experiencing the self or yourself or the state of samadhi. And tapas is that you don't do what you know it's not good in your life. And all kind of mental content which comes which are under the klishta category, and all kind of negative thinking or feelings or emotions or urge to do some negative action. So when we realize that, then we don't do that. We don't support those negativities. We turn back to the positive, which is opposite of those negativities. We remember, at that moment when this appears as a negative thought, we remember which is the opposite, positive thought of that, and then we cherish that kind of thinking. And this is the tapas. Tapas is, to be firm, to be somehow one-pointed and directed to the positive values, And this is 24-hour practice, the tapas, and it's very, very intense practice if we practice it, because the 24-hour, we are always exposed to different kind of mental content we are aware of, and we need to be watchful and see which are not in accord with the principles of yama and niyama, the kind of thinking or anything which is in some way not supportive to the life, your individual or the life of the surroundings, for the realization of the knowledge of your true self. That such kind of thinking we change into those which are supportive to the positive. So it's a kind of process of transformation. And that's the tapas is the heat. Tap means the heat, because the fire is that element which is responsible for transformation by heat. You can purify the mud with the gold, that kind of the stone mixed, where gold is mixed with other things, by heating that, and then it gets separated. So that tapas practice is a heating process for a yogi, which is, and that heat comes through the resisting of not doing what you know that is not good. So once Maharishi Mahesh Yogi said that if we know something what is not good, we should not do that, even in that resistance that we burn out of resisting not to do something what we know is not good. In that sense, even. So that fire, that tapa means the heating process or the fire, is something which is, if we apply this to our life, then we are transforming ourselves. We are transforming our character. We are melting all impurities from us, and we become transformed into the yogi. Yogi means who is living that purity and positivity on all levels, on the level of the thinking, feeling, and speaking and acting, and radiating that positive value to the surrounding, that harmony. And so this is the one of very more important and main practices. One old yogi, Maharishi Swami Demurti, when I was in India with him, he told me, he said, be careful. Enemy is awake 24 hours. You should never sleep. You should never fall asleep, because you must be watchful that the enemy don't take over you. And what is the enemy? These are those inner enemies in the form of negative thinking or feeling or anything. And they are always searching your weak point that that they can overcome you and put you into the trouble and complicate life to you and to your surrounding. So in that case, that yogi needs to have that awakened consciousness, that wakefulness and being 24 hours in the sankalpa, in the resolution of supporting only good, not to entertain the negativity. You remember this Sahana Babatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvina Vathitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai, that Ma Vidvishavahai, we should never entertain negativity. And this is the tapas aspect explained there. So that practice is very important. And it's more important even than asana, pranayama, or other yogic practices. Because by that tapas only you can achieve great purification. Not only on the mental level, but on the physical level also, and improve your physical health. Because you know how much negative thinking and emotions and everything brings the toxins, is causing creation of very strong toxins in your body and poisoning your body. So this is that aspect. And then along with that, having some time to go beyond all activity, to sit, close your eyes and transcend and reach the state of samadhi. And also at the same time cherishing that feeling of inner connectedness with your own source, which is actually slowly you are recognizing that that cosmic soul or Ishvara or the God or is present in every cell of your body and in your consciousness also, and that yourself is connected with it directly. And this is connecting you with the universe. So when you find yourself, who you are, in that state of connecting with yourself, then that connection proceeds further to be connected with the whole universe, to feel connection and state of unity. So this is the most important practice in yoga, those aspects which can give us the ability to reduce the influence of those clashes in our life. So then Patanjali speaks about these kleshas. Which are those kleshas? And he says, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, klesha. So these 5 kleshas are there. And we can say that with those kleshas, we are born. Everybody, whoever come to the existence on this planet, whether humans, whether the animals, whether the plants, everything what is born with those kleshas. And those kleshas, Carl Gustav Jung, when he was studying the Patanjali Yoga Sutras and the nature of those kleshas, he was calling them the natural urges, inborn natural urges, which are present in a deep subconscious level of every being. And from there they are operating. And that basic ignorance in our life, which is avidya, is not related to our ignorance that we don't know something related to anything in the relative field of life, but the ignorance of who we are. What is I? Who is that I? That ignorance about that. And then that if you don't have real knowledge about who you are, if you are that avidya, if it's there, then this is the cause of your wrong identity. And this is asmita, the ego as your wrong identity. And when you are in the condition of your wrong identity, because of that ignorance, then you have strong cravings. You feel your knowledge about yourself is not sufficient to give you experience of happiness, inner happiness, and settledness and stability in your life, because you want to, then you are thrown out for the search of happiness in a way of cravings. This is the raga. I want that, then I feel happy. And naturally that I want to be happy. And it is naturally moving in direction of happiness and running away from the source of unhappiness, which is dvesha. So raga would be the asmita is I, that wrong I. And then that wrong I is always I want. I want that, I want that, I want. And then dvesha is I don't want that. I don't want that, I don't want that. Repulsion. Anything which is there to be the source of our unhappiness, we try to run away from that. I don't want that. And then abhinivesha is the urge for survival. This is the urge for survival because that I feel insecure and it wants always to feel some security and then try to gather as many things around itself to feel secure. And then if something is missing, then feels in danger and everything. So the abhinivesha. So then those 5 kleshas, they are present, they are born with us, and they are present in the deepest level of the subconscious mind. And they can be present in a different intensity in us, in our life. They can be manifested in different intensity in our life, those kleshas. They can be, Patanjali says, avidya kshetram utaresham. The avidya is the fertile field, kshetra, for all other kleshas. Avidya is the source of other kleshas. So we can see one becomes the progression of the kleshas. Avidya, ignorance, is the source of asmita, and asmita becomes the basis of raga, and raga the basis of dvesha, dvesha basis of abhinivesha. So it means I don't know myself. I am in the wrong identity. Because of that, I am craving for happiness. Anything which can bring me happiness, I am looking for that. And then if I am not able to fulfill my desire, then to prevent my suffering, because if I fulfill desire, there will be happiness. If I don't fulfill, there will be suffering. To avoid suffering, dvesha comes. I am starting hating the object of my desire, which was before. So this is like raga means I love some person. I love that person because I feel good and everything. But if that love is not returned to you back, then you will be suffering. To avoid suffering, you will start to hate that person. And in that way, you feel very insecure. And then you become afraid for your existence. And then that stress comes, abhinivesha. So it's a progression. So avidya is the fertile field for all other kleshas. So that's why the aim of yoga psychology is to remove the avidya. If you remove avidya, then all other kleshas will be removed or reduced, better to say reduced, because we cannot remove them completely because we are born with them. But they can be made kind of very much reduced, and this is the tanu state. That's why Patanjali says the purpose of the practice of yoga is klesha tanu karana. Karana means the action of reducing intensity of the kleshas in our life, in our consciousness, even on the subconscious level. And how to do that? Through the practice of yoga, Kriya Yoga, which main purpose is to experience the samadhi. So by experiencing samadhi, you are reducing avidya because you are gaining knowledge of your true self through samadhi. And you are reducing the avidya, you are reducing your wrong identity as asmita, and then everything is reduced. So avidya, then Patanjali explains what is the nature of those kleshas, how they come. So this is the mistaken kind of pure, impure for pure, or anitya, which is what is transitory to the permanent. So wrong kind of we can say avidya or ignorance comes from the wrong knowledge, wrong knowledge about our true self. This is the ignorance. And vidya means knowledge. And if you add a in front of the word, then it is negation of the knowledge. Avidya means wrong knowledge, negation of the knowledge. And this is in some way in the interpretation of the word avidya and its root in the Kali Yuga. But in relation to the Sat Yuga and to the Vedic time, those kleshas we can find being present at the very source of creation. In the absolute level of life, also we can find the concept of those kleshas present. On that very source of all life in the whole universe, there is that infinite level of life which is expressed in the Rig Veda as the first letter A. And then that level of life has knowledge of itself. That A, when that A gets knowledge of itself, and this is becomes avidya. So in Sat Yuga, the meaning of the word avidya was the meaning as having knowledge of knowledge about So this is the interpretation in the Sat Yuga, but in Kali Yuga, the interpretation is the ignorance. So now in the Sat Yuga, the knowledge of what is bringing? When that pure infinite consciousness becomes conscious of itself, then it creates within its infinite condition the point value, ga. So then also it becomes three, becomes subject, object, and the process of experiencing. So then from that state of unity, infinite unified consciousness, there is appearance of the three values. There is appearance of the dot, of the point value in the infinity, and then that point coming back to infinity. And there is some action, transcendental action, which starts happening there in the state of the unity. And this is that what is not. This is the Maya. So then that becoming conscious of itself becomes avidya, because it starts to experiencing itself in the value of the three, and slowly it can forget that it is only one when it starts to develop further in the bigger multiplicity. And then that to ga, that point value, then that ga is having an uncomfortable position, becoming a point in that infinity and wants to come back to So there is a desire. So that ga, then that ga becomes the asmita as a point value. And then n is negation of that condition. Don't want to remain the point. The dvesha and desire going back to and m, it means all the time, never ending. So all the 5 kleshas we can find related to the 5 letters of the first word of the Rig Veda, to Agni, which means that Absolute itself on its infinite level has which can say, principle of the kleshas inbuilt in its own structure, but it is not manifested there. On that level, that one is maintaining its own consciousness of being one, even becoming many, and it's beyond the influence of those kleshas. But when that absolute become manifested, then those kleshas becomes manifested, and then they start to have their influence, because we didn't retain the experience of that one when we are manifested along with the kleshas. So if we are able to maintain that conscious experience of that one, which is samadhi, along with the kleshas by which we are born, then we will not be disturbed by their influences. But if we don't have that samadhi, then the grip of those kleshas is very strong, and they disturb our life and leading to ignorance, and from ignorance to egoism, and to cravings, to hatred, to fear of existence, and the stress and the illness and everything. So that's why the practice is to come back to the source, to remove the avidya, to experience state of samadhi. So this is the in yoga psychology, the main practice. The main practice in yoga psychology is meditation practice, which can allow you to come back to your own self. And then Patanjali explains what is the nature of that asmita or ego. And he says, Darg darshana shaktiyor ekmat ekatmata ivas asmita. So asmita, or the ego, appears when the power of the seer becomes identified with the power of the seeing. Eka. Eka means one. Ekatmata means becoming, these two becoming one. It means identification. So the power of the seeing is, I see that, I hear that, I feel that, that relation of I with the process of seeing and everything. And then it is that I becomes identified with the process of seeing. But in its real essence, that I is the pure witness. It has its own power of having its own existence, independent of the process of the seeing. But it becomes mixed, and when it is mixed, then only I remain with the added to the activity which you are aware of, and there is no knowledge of that I. It's just I, and then all those kind of the content to which that I is attached. So that kind of I is the instrument for a real seer, but when that real seer is not able to maintain itself as a witness, pure witness, 24-hour pure witness, and the nature of that pure witness is the absolute self, pure consciousness. When this is not able to be maintained consciously in our life, then only that I remain as our I, as a wrong identity. But the function of that I is nothing else but just to be the focal point for all activities which we are experiencing. So then we are, this wrong identity only is what remains in our life. And we are living the wrong life in that sense until we don't come back to our real I. Then we start actually living. So, and from that, that's why that asmita becomes the source of all other kleshas and the main source of all kind of mental problems, which gets transformed into the physical problems of the health. So this is also with other kleshas. And in his commentary of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, as I said, I hope this will be soon available to the public. Jung stated that the kleshas are the instinctive urges and oppressions. These are the compulsive mechanisms which lie at the base of the human being. Not knowing our true being is the foundation of all other kleshas. So this is what Jung says. This is what is teaching of yoga. And especially, for example, we can take one klesha, how it is the abhinivesha, which is that urge of survival. In that sense, whatever we experience in our life, we are feeling influenced by the condition of those experiences. And if something we interpret that it is danger for our life, then we will react with a reaction, fight and flight reaction, which is leading to the stress condition, activating the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, and production of all the hormones like cortisol and others which stimulate the sympathetic nervous system and preparing you for survival. So, and on which basis this happens is because you just interpret that situation as dangerous for your life. Maybe in its reality, it is not dangerous for anybody's life. But this was your feeling, this was your interpretation, and then you created that kind of stress reaction. And why you got that interpretation? Because you feel very insecure, that your existence is in danger and everything. This is when that abhinivesha is in a very expressed level in our life. Basically, those 5 kleshas, as I said before, they can be in one condition which is called udara. It means compulsive. And this is what Jung also speaks about, then those kleshas becomes the compulsive mechanisms in our deep subconscious levels, which becomes compulsive for not only our psychology, but also for our physiology. It must behave according to that. So if those kleshas are in that very intense condition in our life, expressed, like avidya, asmita, then they turn into our enemies. And they become our inner enemies for our life. And they are called Shat Ripus. Ripu means the enemy and Shat means 6. There are 6 main enemies which start to rule over our life. And as I said before, those enemies never sleep and they are all the time there and looking for a moment or anything to bring complication to our life. So the kleshas, instinctive urges, are roots in the subconscious, the forces which make the ailment. They are the causes of suffering. They are influencing function of autonomous nervous system. This is what I spoke just. And for example, abhinivesha, urge to survive, is the cause of fight and flight response of autonomous nervous system leading to stress. And there is one new branch in the medical science about what academic Professor Dr. Vida Demarin, the world famous neurologist, spoke. New approach called PNEI. It means psychoneuroendocrinoimmunology. It means connecting the level of the psychical condition of a person, psychical health, with the condition of nervous system and endocrine system and immune system, how everything is connected and influencing each other. So this is a very scientific now explanation of the connection about which yoga was speaking before, about the existence of different levels of our life or different koshas, from the level of ourself up to the all mental levels and then the energy level and the physical level, and everything is related and connected. And the cause is that mental level from where we can realize our true self or our soul. And this is the causal level, which they call it Karana Sharira, that causal body. So the yoga psychology is related to heal the causal body, to heal that body, because then the healing will come to the all levels of other levels of our physical existence, to the energy level and to the physical level of our life. So the healing of the causal body, or coming back to your own soul, or coming back to your own self, knowing yourself is the final and the highest medicine, we can say. So we and all created beings, it means also, as I said, animals and the plants. If you see, the animals also have these kleshas. They are also having fear for existence and everything, and the plants also. But the animals and the plants, they live under the influence of the cosmic intelligence directly. And those kleshas are expressed in their life in some natural way. But we as a conscious beings, the humans, we have free will, and then we can influence the expression of the kleshas as basic urges to be distorted. Those basic urges becomes very much distorted, and then it can create our way of behavior, that we create those enemies in us so strong that we become even worse than the animals in the behavior. So those expressions of kleshas can be colored with the stress and strain in the nervous system. And it can be expressed in the negative conditions. And then when those kleshas are in those udara state, they are becoming 6 inner enemies. So these are the mada, pride or egoism, kama, lust, krodha, anger, moha, delusion, matsarya, jealousy, lobha, greed. And then the humans are worse than the animals in their behavior. So those with kleshas we are born, but those animals become born during our life when those kleshas come to the udara state. So how to get rid of those any inner enemies is to reduce intensity of the kleshas. When they come out from the udara state, then those enemies are destroyed in our life. And then we can proceed to some becoming a normal human being and trying to realize our true nature. So from that deep subconscious level, the kleshas with all these impressions in our subconscious from the past actions, the samskaras, they are combined in different ways and create inner matrix from where are sprouting all different kind of thoughts, ideas, feelings, emotions on our conscious level, which are experiencing. So we need to remove that influence of the kleshas. This is what I was speaking about. And then the kaivalya, or that liberation, can happen as becoming fully realized being, conscious of its true nature. And then we are in tune with the cosmic intelligence, which becomes the motivation for our actions. Brahma bhavati sarati. So also this is what I was speaking already before, that Patanjali speaks about how to, through the tapas process, tapas is involving the knowledge of the principles of yama niyama. It means what is good. And if you become conscious of something what is not good, then immediately you leave that ungood and come to the good, change to the good. This is very important. And this is called pratipaksha bhavana practice, which Patanjali speaks about. So we will just, and this is one of the practices which Patanjali is giving as bringing peace to our consciousness. This is practice to bring chitta prasadanam, means peace and settledness. And then when the consciousness is in that condition, then it can be ekatattva. It's not anymore in the mudha or kshipta or vikshipta condition, but becomes more settled. Ekatattva. And then it can proceed with the practice of yoga more efficiently and come to the niruddha state. It means to realize that transcendental level of our being. So just few words about the one other aspect of yoga psychology from the teaching of Bhagavad Gita. And you know that Bhagavad Gita describes the condition of the relation between the Lord Krishna with Arjuna, warrior on the battlefield, where Arjuna was explaining all kinds of difficulties he had in relation to his condition, which he found on the battlefield, he couldn't solve, neither on the thinking level or reasoning level or feeling level. He couldn't find solution, and he was very desperate. And then he addressed Krishna to help him. So in that chariot, so this was a psychotherapy session, which lasted maybe for 2-3 hours. That Krishna was as a psychotherapist and Arjuna the patient, where the Krishna was so successful to not only help psychical condition of Arjuna, but to bring him to the state of enlightenment in these few hours. So then we can find in that text very interesting principles which Krishna was applying in the process of yoga psychology. Yoga psychology principles, we can say, in that process of psychotherapy to Arjuna. So one principle was the student-teacher relationship. The knowledge of the full development of consciousness can be gained most effectively when the one seeking knowledge is receptive to a teacher who can speak from the level of enlightenment. When the student is ready, teacher is coming, teacher comes, so, or teaching comes. So what was happening actually, the first 2 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, you can find that that Arjuna is speaking all the time about his problems, and Krishna was not interrupting him. He allowed Arjuna to try on his own to find solution. And then when Arjuna came to the final point that he acknowledged that he is not able to help himself, then he surrendered to Krishna. And then this is that ideal student-teacher relationship of the surrender and receptiveness. So then Arjuna was ready to receive the teaching from Krishna. Then Krishna could help him. If the Krishna would argue with him during his speak, and then while he is trying, and then arguing and trying to convince him this, it's very difficult process, and then not reaching the the task. So this is the first principle in the psychotherapy. Then the second principle is the second element. First, to uplift the person which is in the process of suffering or the conflict. So that's why after Krishna was listening Arjuna for so many, for that 2 chapters, then first thing what Krishna told to Arjuna, he's not referring to any problem he was speaking to him, but he just said, "O son of Kunti." He addressed Arjuna as a son of Kunti, and Kunti was the mother of Arjuna, and Kunti was very, the sattvic person, full of virtues, as embodiment of all the virtues. So then Krishna, by purpose, introduced that name of his mother to remember him about those positive values. From all the negative, he just shift him his awareness to that he remembers what is opposite, what are the positive values. It is like that she was embodiment of the Yama principles. And this is that shifting to the positive, that Pratipaksha Bhavana from Patanjali. And then next thing is when he put him in that positive condition, then teach him practice of transcending, to go beyond, to come to the source, to realize his own self. Then he told, this is the second element, not dealing with the problems, but transcend all the level of the problems and go to the source. And this is Nistray Gunyo Bhavarjuna, the next teaching, to go beyond the action of the 3 gunas. It means go beyond the relative field of existence, come to that absolute field of life. And then there is the solution. This is the solution for all problems. So this was that the second. So the 3 main principles I just wanted to address you. And then after Arjuna had that experience of the self, then the Krishna started to give him knowledge on the basis of his experience, because the experience and the knowledge is the complete wisdom. So, and this is the method which Krishna was applying further, teaching the Arjuna, explaining him all the consequence of that experience which he had and everything. So these are the three main principles of approach of the yoga psychology from the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, teaching of Lord Krishna. And then at the end, Arjuna just said, Smriti Labdhak, at the end of Bhagavad Gita. He said, just my memory returned. I regain my memory. So it means that self-realization is realization of something which is all the time there with you, but we just lose the memory about that. And then the practice of yoga is through the experience of samadhi, you are regaining that memory, just regaining the memory, nothing else, nothing new is created. Just what is all the time there now come to the conscious experience. And this is the bringing then normalization to the life. So in that sense, yes, I think already we went over the time, and I will conclude this presentation about the yoga psychology with these two main texts in that sense. And if you have any question, please, you can ask. We have still a few minutes, and then anything you want to ask, you are free to ask. You can open the microphone and and video and ask.
May I ask, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear. Yes.
Yeah. May I ask you to say what is the exact difference between vritti and pratyaya in Yoga Sutra?
Yes, yes. The vritti, it is basically related to the object, object of experience. And sometimes Patanjali is using the pratyaya, sometimes vritti. At the beginning, he speaks more about vrittis, but later, you know, the word pratyaya he is using when he is entering, explaining that mechanics on a deeper internal level of the mental experiences, as a more kind of finer level of the thoughts, the pratyaya. Like vrittis can be experienced on the sensory condition also, all kinds of experiences. On the emotional level, different emotions, different sensory experiences, different objects of different, the tanmatras and everything, but pratyaya is more related to that most refined mental level.
Thank you.
Because then he used this in the third chapter more, this terminology. Because there he is explaining that function of these three antarkaranas, three internal instruments, ahamkara, buddhi, and manas. Then he used more the terminology pratyaya.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. But yoga is leading us beyond pratyaya also. Yes, is there any Other question? This is like a difference between the vidya and prajna. The prajna is a much deeper level of knowledge, which is related to the distinction between the power of the seer and the power of the seeing. The prajna. This is the deepest level of knowledge of the experiencing the difference, differentiating. And this brings the state of the self-realization, that prajna. But vidya can be related to the more gross levels of the knowledge experienced on the more gross levels. So thank you very much. Then, if there are no other questions, and then I thank you very much for participating, and seeing you